Welcome to the Ohms Property Podcast, your go-to guide for navigating the world of property investing. I'm your host, and in every episode, I sit down with property investors, developers, and top industry experts to share their insights, strategies, and inspiring stories. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started, join us as we explore all aspects of building wealth through property. Welcome back to another episode of the Ohms Property Podcast. Today, I'm joined with Adil from Key Property, who's an estate agent and also a property expert. We're going to get to know him, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. Adil, how you doing?
Fabulous. Thank you for having me on. It was nice. It's nice to see you in the flesh finally. I know we've had a little chat here and there.
Yeah,
and I think you've spoken to my business partner as well, but we've never physically come face to face. So thank you for inviting me down. It's a pleasure to be on the receiving end of a podcast for a change rather than sort of hosting them.
Good.
Not that I've done too many, but we've got a few on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, I would say that seat's more difficult than this one because I'm the one who just asked the questions and you're the one who's got to answer them. So it's a bit easier, isn't it? But
for sure.
Thank you so much for coming in. I think I've got a lot of guests that seem to be travelling from South London to this podcast studio, which is in East London. I've had that many guests that are sort of living locally to here, which is quite an interesting one.
Yeah, I can say the parking is a nightmare here. I'll be honest with that. But
you're going to put people off that I'm interviewing.
No,
I want to come here.
There is some parking. It's just a struggle to find.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, you're right. So I actually grew up in South London. I grew up in Catford. Our office, our main office, our head office is based in Penge in South East London as well.
So before you get into that, if you can introduce yourself.
For sure.
Tell us about the business. Tell us what you're up to if you can.
Great. So my name's Adil. People know me as Ads as well. I've got an estate agency business, which is our core business. So we do multiple things in property. So our core business, like I say, is the estate agency. We do residential and commercial lettings, sales, property management, which is our sort of core thing. With property management, we've got over 400 properties that we've been managing since we've established in 2016. We've got another office in Welling, which is our Kent office, if you like. So we've got the London office, Kent office.
Yeah.
So again, we sort of go between two. We've got about 9 employees in total, actually reaching 10 now. Between the two offices, so property managers, negotiators, managers as well, like lettings managers, sales manager. So we've sort of been growing the business from there. Sort of where it started for me, if I bring it back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I've dabbled in a lot of things. So my actual career in estate agents began in 2010. But before that, I wasn't really too sure what I was going to do. So I've dabbled in retail. I've dabbled in working in restaurants. So doing all sorts of different things, even some building. But sort of when I bring it back further, I think I was about 12. And I was spending the day with my uncle. And my uncle's got a small property portfolio. And back in the day, it was a little bit different. He'd go and collect some of the rents in cash from his tenants because they were like students. There wasn't really HMO licenses back then. And obviously, he'd declare everything as normal. But with that, he would go down so he could do an inspection at the same time. Because with students, there tends to be a bit more high wear and tear. And when we went down with him, this is where the spark sort of grew, I think, bringing it back to my memory. We went down to New Cross where one of his buildings is, and he had his little book with him where he sort of made his notes, and he said, sit down, son. We sat down in the dining area, and then these people just started coming in one by one and saying, yeah, room 1, X amount of money, room 2, X, and then it was like five rooms. And as I'm writing it down, like he's just like trying to teach me the ropes kind of thing in hindsight. And it seemed really good to me. I thought, wow, like he's not like working physically for this. He'll do his little inspection. It will then, and that's what triggered me wanting to, in the long term, get into property. But I thought I'd try different things to see what I like. And the main thing about property is sort of like having that residual income. People sort of say you can sit back and it does it all for you. There is that element, but you do still need to be hands-on. Like if you're not doing your inspections or you don't have an agent doing the inspections for you, things can get on top. So if a tenant's maybe not maintaining a property and stuff like that. So fast forward to 2010, after I did my GCSEs and stuff, I didn't do any A-levels, didn't go to university. So I wanted to get into property. That was sort of where I was driving towards. We're knocking on loads of estate agency doors. Not many people were entertaining it. And then I came across Countrywide, where I was hired. So I was hired as a trainee, didn't really know anything, bottom of the barrel, if you like.
South East London?
Yeah, so it started in Woolwich, South East London.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to introduce a sponsor of the channel. Trinity Finance is a directly authorised FCA regulated mortgage brokerage. Founded in 2015 with over 30 mortgage brokers, we're really well placed to help you with all your property finance needs. Starting with first-time buyers and those moving home, we also help people remortgaging residential and buy-to-let property. Alongside that, we specialise in ground-up development, commercial lending, HMO funding, mezzanine, auction, and also your traditional buy-to-let. If that's of interest, get in contact with us via email at info@trinityfinance.co.uk, or you can give us a ring on 01322 907 000, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Where
It's Man & Co.
Yes, and it's changed drastically since then, the area
I used
as
to
a
work
whole.
in that office.
Did you?
Yeah,
There we go.
yeah. Years ago. So we've got something in common, because I started my career as a mortgage broker at Countrywide. They were, well, they still are.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know actually, are they still? But they were at the time the largest UK estate agency
They've been
business.
bought out
By Connells, is it? Or
yes, Connells Group. Yeah.
And at the time, when I first started as a mortgage broker, they had this mass exodus of mortgage brokers, and I ended up being sort of someone covering 3 or 4 of their branches. So I kept on getting asked to go to Man & Co, Lewisham, Catford, Sidcup, Lee Green, Woolwich. It was like I was floating around, sort of servicing all the branches at the time. So
You know what you
our
say
paths might have crossed a little bit there.
I think they may have.
That would have been. I wasn't there very long, to be honest, just over a year.
What year was you there? Do you remember?
Oh God, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But I'm going to say 2011, 12, around that sort of time, maybe.
Our paths definitely would have crossed at some point, because it's funny you say that, because I started in Woolwich. So I was with them for 6 years. I started as a
You're
trainee.
brave to stay there for that long.
I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I didn't know any better. I thought, and you know what it is? A bit of me had that loyalty, because where I knocked on so many estate agents' doors and no one would entertain me, and they gave me the opportunity, I thought, I've got a bit of a loyalty here, and I was learning along the way.
Yeah.
So obviously I started as a trainee lettings negotiator, ended up being a branch manager. But my career was progressing almost every year. So that's probably what kept me there.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
they'd give me a promotion, give me more money, and I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
They're looking after me as I thought.
I don't know if things have changed, but back then the staff turnover was incredible. I mean, in the estate agency, it generally is quite high in the corporate world, because you find lots of negotiators, and even some of the sort of sales managers, they a lot of the time are overworked. In an estate agency business, they're expected to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning for a morning meeting, and then sometimes they're expected to work to 6 o'clock in the evening. Sometimes
You're bringing back memories.
Every Saturday. Sometimes these estate agents are even open on Sundays.
Yeah.
And you might need to do every other Saturday or every other Sunday.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, they do feel that they're overworked, as far as I know, in the corporate world, which I think had led to a lot of staff turnover. But I suppose when you then move into your own business, you don't mind working hard, do you? Because it's completely for yourself.
Exactly.
And you don't mind putting the hours in. So how are things going at Key Property? What are you guys up to at the moment? How's the business looking?
Yeah, so we launched in 2016. It's growing from strength to strength every year. The numbers are growing, turnover's growing, the profits are growing, but we tend to pump a lot of it back into the business. So obviously when we started, it's just myself and my business partner Ayrton, the two of us. And funny how we sort of started, actually. We used to be competitors. So he used to work at an independent agent in Sydenham called Uniplan, who have since been bought out by Acorn. So we were competitors, and one of our mutual clients basically kind of set us up, if you like. So we kept, in this guy's ear saying, we want to go solo, but, thinking of doing it with somebody, but don't really have anyone in mind. And one day we've both been invited out to dinner without each of us knowing. And we've turned up at the same time to this dinner spot in Beckenham. I said to him, what on earth are you doing here? He was, I'm here for a meal. And he was like, well, okay, well, obviously we're both here for a meal. I was like, who are you meeting? And he told me the name of the chap. And I was like, that's funny. I said, because I'm meeting him as well. So it was like a blind date, if you like, but for business. And we sat down with this chap, and he was like, you boys are both saying to me, you want to do your own thing. What's stopping you from doing it together? And then we used to send each other on goose chases. The keys aren't here, mate. You've got to go elsewhere. We got them in somewhere.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and then we just sat down, and it sort of clicked from there. And then we sort of started chatting every day. And then we sort of thought, you know what, within like 7 months, we was like, let's just do it. What have we got to lose? We know we're good at what we do. If it doesn't work out and it goes pear-shaped, we can always go back and work for someone else.
Yeah.
And we'd kick ourselves later on down the line. If we never took the plunge, then we'd be like, what if? And we're not that way inclined. So we launched in 2016 a little Muse office in Chislehurst. It was like, I don't know if you know the Royal Parade, there's like, restaurants along there and there's like little Muse. So we took that office because we weren't really looking for the footfall, because we had sort of our own sort of client base, if you like, of friends, family that wanted to use our services anyway. And then if we wanted new clients, they wanted to see we had a tangible office, not somewhere where you rent desk space and you can just up and go, because in most circumstances, a property is probably the most valuable asset that you'll own, right? And if you're going to entrust that with someone, you sort of want to see that they're going somewhere, they're somewhere tangible, and they can't just up and leave. And they've got commitments. So we took the lease there. Funny enough, we still have that lease to this day, but we sort of sublet the office, and it's coming up next year, and we're gonna hand it back and sort of be like, you know what, it's done, the time's over, and crack on. So we started there, and within a year we sort of grew and we sort of built, and we was like, you know what, we actually need a high street premises now, because we want the footfall now, and we're starting to grow and get a team. So we sort of grew from there. We took our first premises in Penge on the High Street in South London, which was actually that same guy that put us together, his premises.
Oh, right.
So his tenant was leaving. He was like, you know what, boys, do you want to take this premises? You seem like you're growing and going in the right direction. Don't worry about a lease. Sort of did us a favour in a way. It was a gentleman's agreement. Didn't make us sign any leases or anything. We went in there, shook hands on it, and he's a man of his word. We're a man of our word. And we went in there and we sort of grew that. And then we ended up outgrowing the office.
Yeah.
So we actually went 3 doors down on the high street again, and got an office that was 3-4 times the size. You've got 6 desks at the front, two meeting offices, and then the staff mess, if you like, and where we made it into our sort of podcast studio as well. So it went from strength to strength there. And like I said, we do residential, commercial, sales, lettings, and management, more so the residential management. And that's been our core business from day one. So we've managed to build that up now to around 400, just over 4, I think it's 415 units or something like that at the moment, on the residential side. So the business is going well. I think the most difficult thing, I think, is staffing. You were mentioning earlier there's a high turnover, and that can be for many reasons. Like sometimes you'll take people on, you'll train them really well, and then they'll go and get poached by other estate agents, which is, these things happen. And then maybe you take people on, they're not the right fit. So I say higher turnover. Across the years, we've had many different employees with us. Obviously, some have been with us for 3, 4, 5 years, and then they want to change. Like one went up to London, one sort of went to become a mum. So there are some really good employees that we've had. I think the most important thing in any business is having a good team around you. Because the business won't run with people that haven't got the experience and stuff. So we're doing pretty well now.
It's amazing. I think I've toyed with the idea of buying an estate agency business over the years, or opening one, because the existing business that I have, estate agency, is quite a complementary business to it. I mean, they're sort of they would very much complement each other, because ultimately people buying property need finance, and I own a mortgage brokerage. So I've looked at that, and quite often it's a really difficult business model, I think, for a lot of people. And it's quite interesting that you say the majority of your revenue comes from property management, or that's where you really focused. I think that's been really clever. I don't know if it was intentional for you to do that at the beginning, but the key aspect when you're looking to value or buy an estate agency business typically comes back down to what recurring income that business generates.
Bang on.
And when you are selling property for people and you're in the sales market, you have a pipeline, and that pipeline is only as good as your staff, because you need a lister or two, you need negotiators doing the viewings, and you may have 10 listings in your first month, another 10 in your second month, and after 3 months of having 30 listings, some are going to fall through your fall through rate, and the rest are then going to turn into banked income that's going to start coming in, depending on how quickly you're turning over your pipeline. But if all the staff leave and you sell all those properties and they all complete, there is no more income.
Absolutely.
So you've got this revolving need to continue to bring new business in. The difference with that, and as you know, with property management, is you're taking a fee, a monthly fee that comes in as a recurring income. And once a landlord trusts an estate agency business to manage their property for them, they typically stay for a very long period of time. And so if you have this ongoing revenue that's continual and it's almost guaranteed, then you can actually value that business and it can be sold. sold,
Absolutely.
which is really interesting. So the fact that you've set your business up with those foundations of that this income comes in, it's steady, it's guaranteed, it allows you to then, I suppose, mitigate a lot of the risks of a estate agency.
Absolutely.
You know, having the high street premises, business rates, the costs of that, the staffing, the impact of things like COVID, you know, all these things that can really affect businesses. Because when you go up and down your high street, I mean, estate agents, barber shops, and I don't know, nail shops, betting offices, they seem to be the majority of what we see on lots of charity shops all down the high street, right? But sometimes if you think about Welling, for example, I only talk about Welling because you've got an office there, I've got a business in Welling. It's one of the, you know, between Welling High Street and Belgrove, it's one of the longest high streets in Kent, I think. And if you go up, there is an array of estate agency business there, isn't there already? You've got your Robinson.
I think there's about 8 or 9 of them, to be honest.
Okay. I thought it might have been more than that, but there have been lots, some come and gone. And you typically, I mean, all estate agents do this, don't they? They go out on listings and they say, we've got the biggest market share in this town, and that's how they sell their services, which I've never thought was the best thing to do, just because you've got a big market share that you should list your property with that agent. But some of these agencies have been in their position in that parade for 20, 30 years.
Absolutely.
And they've never moved. Some of the corporates have been there for a long time. Some of the privately owned businesses have been there a long time. And you sort of think to yourself, how is it possible for someone to open a new estate agency business with a perhaps a brand that's not franchised, that's unknown? Because I think Key Property sounds like a non-franchised, privately owned business. Create it yourself, and then create traction to compete with businesses that have been there for so many years. So if someone was to say to you, like, why would I not go and use Countrywide now? Why should I use Key Property? What would you say to that, I suppose? What would be your response?
It's the personal service. So look, people buy people at the end of the day. You can use whichever agent you want. And also it comes down to the marketing as well. Now you say, oh no, we talk about all these estate agents being on the high street and stuff like that, but it comes down to your online presence. So with us, we don't spare any expense. We're on Rightmove, we're on Zoopla, we're on the market. We've got social media going as well. So we'll do video tours of properties. So we're on all the physical platforms that your property can be on. We'll pay for the extra premium listings or feature properties and stuff like that. So it comes down to the experience of the individual, how well the team works within the company, how accessible you will be. So pretty much all of our clients have my mobile number. When it comes to the corporate side of things, I can guarantee you that after hours, none of their employees will be answering the phone. As of a weekend, they won't respond to messages, all that kind of thing. So it's about being personal and approachable and getting exposure for the property. So it's all about having that online presence. So, you know, bringing it also back to what you were saying about the overheads and stuff like that. That is the reason why we started with lettings and management, and we didn't start by doing sales or even commercial at the beginning. Those have been sort of add-ons that we've added to the business after to add more cream or the cherry to the cake, if you like. But that's what keeps us going. And it's recurring business, as you say, but it's also, we get a lot of business through word of mouth. So forget the online presence that we have, which is fabulous for the marketing side. We haven't done any paid adverts on Google and stuff like that for generating new business, which is the next step for us to take, because we're missing a massive opportunity there. But I think again, it comes down to is servicing all the leads that we get. We don't want to be inundated and then the service level drops. So for us, it's about, okay, so we're at this level, we know we can get to here, but do we have the capability of servicing the leads at the same standard rather than doing the extra business, having 25-30% disgruntled clients, and then having people ranting about us rather than raving about us. So even if you check us out on Google, our reviews, we've got so many reviews, and we've like got a 4.8 star rating for Penge and a 5-star rating for Welling.
Very good. Yeah. Amazing. Really enjoying the conversation. Can I ask you about your personal side in property? Because I understand that you're investing in property, and I think you might have done some property development yourself as well. Could you talk
a small fraction?
Okay. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So obviously, being in property, it all sort of works hand in hand, right? So the business, it sort of runs itself, if you like. Obviously, we're still present in the business, working in the business, not just working on the business. And we sort of wanted to branch out. You know, you have all these entrepreneurs that say you have to have several streams of income, and if you want to get to the next level and become like a multi-millionaire. So we're sort of striving to do that. And it all comes back down to ownership as well, because let's say the business, excuse me, the business dries up, and the estate agency becomes like, I don't know, we can't do as much business, we're not doing the sales, and the management sort of stays the same. We need to now think about where we're investing our money into and what we're going to do, and what we know best is property. So before we sort of delve into the development side that we've done, is we've got a secondary sister company arm to the business where it's like a rent to rent. So we take on properties from landlords for 3 to 5 years who want that security, and it's called a guaranteed rent scheme basically. We'll give them X amount for that entire period. The maintenance of the internals will be down to us, bar structural, electrical and plumbing. And then they'll get a guaranteed fixed income for that 3 to 5 years. And we'll then sublet to local authorities, housing associations and some more. Like some corporate clients like banks and NHS and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that sort of generates us more revenue. So now we're sitting back and we're thinking, okay, so we've got the businesses running. What can we do? So we've bought a few properties for ourselves, standard buy-to-lets, but since interest rates are changing, they were in our personal name to begin with as well, before we started opening limited companies to buy in. Things change, as you know, you've got properties yourself as well. So what we've done now is we've been buying, the one example I'll give you is we bought a commercial premises, and we changed it into a mixed use premises. And the reason why we wanted to go down that route is because we've got best of both worlds. So with commercial leases, as you know, 5, 10, mostly 10 years, but can go 15 or 20 years. So we bought this one building. It was used as offices. It's in Dartford. We then retained the ground floor as commercial use. Got planning permission to add a doorway at the front, because before it was all internal. And then we converted the uppers into a 2-bed flat. And obviously rent them both out, income comes in, pays for the finance, and then you get some left over. It's very different to the standard buy-to-let side, because you've got the whole process of getting the planning through. We was quite fortunate that when we did the deal, the vendor approved us to put the planning application in whilst the sale was going through. So the planning was thankfully granted within like 3 weeks of completion.
That's good.
And the reason it could have been done sooner, but we tried to be a bit... not greedy, but we tried to maximise the site basically and get more out of it. Rather than make it in 2-bed, we was going to do like a loft conversion, try and get another 1-bed, like a studio at the top. They said, it's too much, there's not enough parking and so on and so on, to come up with all these other conditions and stuff. So we sort of reverted, forgot about the loft conversion, saved costs on that, reverted it to a 2-bed, and it was pretty much straightforward from there. So it was pretty good going.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, lots of people that have businesses that generate a profit, they need to diversify and invest that money elsewhere, don't they? And, I have this debate with quite a lot of people around property versus pensions / stocks and shares. And, there are arguments for property, and then there are arguments for the stock market and that side of things. And it really does depend, I think, a lot of the time on your skill set. Sorry, apologies. No. So, for example, if you're an expert in property already, and because you've been valuing property for many years and you know what makes a good property investment, and you've been letting property, so you understand the management side, perhaps you can then implement this guaranteed rent type business for your own properties. You've already got this kind of synergy of businesses, which means you can probably buy really well because you understand what a good price property is. You can then manage it yourself and probably do that at next to nothing. You can, cost-wise, don't know, but I mean, you said you were a builder at one point, so maybe you can keep that down a little bit and just have some technical knowledge, but a small amount. And then you've also got like the long-term letting and management of it, haven't you?
Absolutely.
So the things they make sense. Now, if I said to you, right, go and start picking various shares that are undervalued and try and turn your money into more money, essentially doing that, that's a whole nother learning curve, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So I had a guest on recently who was in property quite heavily for a number of years, and bought a significant number of properties, and now really focuses on Forex and crypto, and had a complete change of heart and went on that. And he's got a lot
new skill set to learn, isn't it?
He's got a lot of reasons why he thinks property is not as good as those investments. But sometimes it just comes down to how much you know and how much you can influence something. Now, if someone's got no knowledge of property, they don't know how to buy a below market value property, or something that potentially can have a planning uplift, or something that's distressed and can be is good value for money. They're just literally going to walk into a corporate estate agency and I'll have that 3-bed semi there in Dartford for 400 grand, and I'm going to take a 250 grand mortgage on it. I'm going to put 150 grand down as a deposit, and then I'm going to rent it out for £1,600 a month. You know, the actual investment that they've made, even with leverage, a lot of the time is a poor one, because there is some capital appreciation potentially, really long term. There is the yield that they're going to collect.
Very low though, isn't it?
Yeah,
the yield.
But the answer is, what could someone else do with that 150k?
Absolutely.
If they bought that same property for 320, for example, did something to it, made it worth more money, refinanced, put some money back into their account. So how you can influence the investment by your own skill set and your knowledge, for a lot of people, is a deciding factor on whether you should buy businesses, open businesses, run businesses, buy property, invest in some passive index fund. It all depends on your skill set, doesn't it?
And your appetite as well, isn't it, really?
Course. Risk appetite.
Absolutely, because you bringing it back as well. So like we've done all that property stuff, and it is our skill set, our main bread and butter. That's why we're sticking to it, because we did try something else. We bought into the franchise Fireaway Pizza. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah.
So we bought.
When you say you bought one, or
so I secured the site because I know about rentals and the commercials and stuff, and I got some connections. We secured one in Woolwich, actually more Plumstead than Woolwich, to be fair, which probably in hindsight we should have been in main town Woolwich rather than, but the rent was like a third of the price. And obviously it's mostly like delivery stuff, isn't it, right? Yeah. So we bought into the brand. We became a franchisee with another business partner. So myself, Ayrton, and somebody else who's in catering, and he's got like burger joints and stuff like that. So we bought that, and it wasn't our main skill set. I was spending quite a lot of time on it because I wanted to make sure it was running smoothly. And as soon as I stepped out of the business to let it like be staff run, because that was the goal. Well, even when I was there, to be fair, it was doing all right, but if you looked at across the board for a year, we was breaking even. Now, don't get me wrong, it's great to break even, but we're not here for fun. We're here to make money, right? And it wasn't our core skill set, you know, being in that industry. So we ended up selling. So we actually, unfortunately, sold at a bit of a loss. So the other partner bought us out in the end. But although we broke even throughout the year, we didn't get as much money back as we invested in the first place. But for us, it was like, right, it's a learning curve. Yeah. As you say, you can dabble in different things and try different things. But if you're not immersed in it, then you're not going to know ways to sort of get out of it as such. Yeah, for sure. So we got out of there, and we stuck to the property, and we're doing property deals and like little flips here and there, buying sort of below market value, retaining for a couple of years. Like another one we did was we bought a 1-bedroom apartment in like a three-story building in Grove Park. We got that for a very good price. We ended up managing to reconfigure it, made it into a 2-bed, released some equity. So it's like kind of free, if you like. And then we've just retained it and we rent it out. But more so we're sort of trying to go towards freeholds now rather than leaseholds, because you can get entangled in high service charges and ground rents and all that kind of stuff.
Can I ask you some questions? You seem to be someone who's spinning quite a few plates. Yep. I'm not sure how old you are. I would say maybe you're similar age to me.
I'll be 35 this year.
Yeah, same age as me. So you're spinning quite a few plates. You've got a few businesses on the go, all complementary to each other. Yes. But what is actually motivating you? Because you've got sort of, it doesn't sound like you're slowing down at any point. No. What's behind all of this?
Right. So we were discussing before we got into the podcast, but I'm about to have my 4th child. Right. So I've got an 8-year-old son, my only son, and the rest of the girls. I've got a 5-year-old daughter. My other daughter turned 1, and I've got another daughter due in June. Praise to God. So yeah, so I'm putting my children through private education, right? So which can be quite costly. But I want the best for them, basically. Now, and also I'm looking at the greater picture, so for the future. So for me, we were sort of discussing earlier as well about what it sort of is a safe investment or a safe bet, if you like. Now, property, all right, there's dips and there's peaks, if you like. But I see that property for me, well, it's what I know, but it's the safest investment. Because although if you're in the game for the long term, 20, 30, 40 years, and you have no intention of potentially selling, or you can sell a couple here and there, but you're in for the long-term game, then I see that as sort of like residual income. So let's say I don't want to do the estate agency anymore, I don't want to do the rent-to-rent business anymore, and I want to sell it, I can exit. And then it's like, okay, what do you do with that money? So again, it comes back to the property. For me, what's driving me is I want to leave a legacy behind for my children, so they don't have to work as hard as maybe I did, my parents did, our grandparents did. So if I can have a large property portfolio, bringing in income, it can service their school fees as it does now. Doesn't put a strain on myself or my wife. and then in the end it'll be like a pension for us, and also a starting block for them. So for me, the long-term goal is to be able to do developments, not work in business. Can work on a business, but maybe have people working in the business and running the businesses for us. And the way things are going at the moment, I want to sort of move overseas. Now, if I can make it work where I've got a substantial property portfolio here, and it's owned in a limited company, and then I can maybe get it up in a trust, then it's secure. And then I've got the income residually, as they say, to be able to support a lifestyle for myself and my children, and hopefully for generations to come. So that's what kind of drives me and pushes me.
That's amazing. There's something that's just come to mind, because it sounds like you've got obviously ambitions to systemize the business a little bit more and slowly step out of it and focus on things that are more passionate. Not that they're not passionate to you, but just other things that would be perhaps long-term beneficial for you. A long time ago, it must have been at least 10 years ago now, a chap that I hold quite highly in the property, I regard quite highly in the property space, who's got significant, wealth, I'd say, recommended a book to me, which did change a lot of things in my business. I'm not sure if you've read this book. You can listen to it as well on like an audio version, but it's a book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I haven't
read it, no.
I'd highly recommend, if you haven't, to just check it out. Even if you're just, I know you go to the gym, go to the gym for an hour, plug it in and listen to it. But I won't spoil it for you. But it's all about running a business and being that person that they call it the technician. It's the person that's in the business that's doing everything, that essentially spinning so many plates and keeping the business together. And it's talking about how people can step away from doing that. And it gives it follows a lady who's a baker, and how she loses her passion for baking when she starts running this bakery business. But I would highly recommend that you listen to it, and any of the listeners to this podcast, because it really does change your perspective. And so if you think about, like, say, for example, McDonald's, a person who owns the McDonald's franchise, because they're mainly the franchises, sometimes you do see these people working in the business, and sometimes that's a great thing to keep it going and keep it being really efficient and on track. But a lot of the time that person doesn't work in the business. There's a chap who lives close to me where I live, who owns a load of franchises of a fast food chain, and he never works in the business. He's systemized controls and runs the business and works on them, and they are very efficient. So sometimes it just changes your mindset ever so slightly, or maybe just gets you thinking a little bit differently.
You've definitely hit the nail on the head.
I recommend that,
because that is definitely something that we are trying to implement now. So
I'll put a link to that in the show notes for anyone who's listening. It's The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It's an American guy. He's got quite an annoying voice, to be honest with you. But if you can look past that and just get through the book, you will take some nuggets away. Adil, can I ask you a few more things? We're coming to the end of the show, probably another 10 minutes or so before we have to wrap up. But can I talk to you a little bit about the sort of guaranteed rent space?
Please, for sure.
That rent business, and how... just a bit more of the intricacies around that, because there's lots of people that I speak to that are, they'll take a property and perhaps convert it into a HMO or rent it to a family, but they will be very stuck on going down the working professional route and having a, private tenancy between the individual and the family, or an individual that wants to live in their property. And then on the other hand, you find landlords and people that their sole strategy is absolutely to completely avoid that. And they want to solve a need. They want to provide the property to someone who is in need of a property via social housing or temporary accommodation or, anything like that, supported living, those types of things. So could you talk to me a little bit about that and what you're actually doing in that rental space? And do you let your properties via that route as well?
Yeah, so the ones that we do on guaranteed rent aren't private tenants. I mean, they're working, but they're also receiving assistance. And we don't give them ASTs. They don't have ASTs with us. They have license agreements.
Okay.
Because I'm sure you do know, but the new renters' right bills that's coming out, Section 21 is going to be banned, and all this kind of stuff. So it's basically going to rock the boat a lot. So what we're finding, when you buy a property, why do you buy a property, right? So obviously not your home, but as an investment. You buy it because you want income and you want to make money, right? So if you're thinking with your head rather than your heart, it doesn't matter who is living in the property as long as it's being maintained and you're receiving your rent.
True.
Mistaken?
Yeah.
So if you're getting your rent, your property's being looked after, and you've got that secure for a long period of time, and there's nothing for you to worry about, that is the best possible outcome for you, because it's a business at the end of the day. It's like we was coming back to you saying, you know, this book about reading it and not working in a business, staying out of it, and the business running for you. It's the same concept. So if you buy to let and you give it to let's say our company for this rent to rent, and you know for 3 to 5 years, you don't have to do anything in there unless it's structural, electrical, or plumbing based. What more could you ask for?
Yeah.
So I think the cool thing is for people to sort of take a step back and think with their head and their business mind rather than their heart. Now, it could be that it might have been their old family home. So that's more maybe like of an accidental landlord, if you like, or someone that maybe wanted to upscale and upsize, or they might have inherited the house. So they might have a personal attachment. So they want to be more picky. But you can put a private tenant in there, get rent insurance. There could be a nightmare tenant.
Yeah, of course.
You know, they can trash, and there's nothing you can do apart from maybe claim off their 5-week deposit.
Yeah.
But how far does that 5-week deposit stretch? Coming to the supported living side and the HMO. So we don't personally take on HMOs from we sublet them to supported living companies or other companies that deal with HMOs, but we don't convert any of the properties into HMOs unless previously agreed with the landlord. So there's nothing for them to worry about, you know, breaching rules and regulations and getting, you know, fined by the local authority and stuff like that. And because we work with local authorities very closely, as well as housing associations.
So are you getting enhanced rents? So,
correct.
Because there's got to be a motivation for you to take someone's property on, take it on a lease. I don't know if it's an FRI or an IRI, but you're taking it on a long-term basis.
Yeah.
You're then going through perhaps sometimes furnishing the properties.
Exactly.
And there's a process, isn't there?
Absolutely.
So this is a material decision for you to do this thing, to take on a business venture. So whatever you're paying that homeowner or landlord for their property, there has to be a margin in it for you.
Correct, yeah.
So how do you get the margin? Is it via sweating the asset more, via having temporary accommodation, or what's the situation?
So various ways, but the main scheme that we're doing now is like the temporary accommodation side of things. So you say it's temporary, but it's kind of long term. No one's in there for a day or a week. They're in there for months, sometimes years. So, okay, we might have to furnish the place.
Yeah.
But because we've got these agreements and these contracts with the local authorities and housing associations, look, there is a housing shortage, right? That's why so many people are going to local authorities, say, look, like, I'm struggling to find a private property. So then they get assistance. They're still working, but then they might get a top up, or the council supports them and they'll have maybe an agreement with the council. They're still not an AST. So yes, we do have to furnish them. But if we're taking on a property for 3 years, let's say 10% of properties might need a lot of attention after the 3 years. That will take a fraction of the money that your profits away from it, but it comes with the territory. It's about volume. So we've got 115 units now. Let's say we work on a 20 to 30% margin. The rent's guaranteed. They don't have to pay a fee to an agent to manage it because it's being managed by us through the rent to rent scheme anyway. So they're getting the management for free, they're getting their rent, and then maintenance is covered by us. Obviously, because we've got the estate agency business and we've got contractors around us as well, it's very easy for us to do it. Like you say, it sort of works hand in hand. And when we've got the experience, we know we'll do our inspections. We've got employees specifically in that business that goes and inspects the properties, where some maybe every 3 or 4 months, some maybe only once a year. It depends on what level the clients are looking after the place.
What's the sort of margin for the temporary accommodation over standard housing, LHA, local housing association rates?
For the client, you mean, or for ourselves?
For temporary accommodation.
So let's say for example, you've got a 1 bed, right?
Yeah.
And you give it to us, and we say to you, right, we're going to pay you £1,000 a month for this 1 bed.
Yeah.
You might have been getting £1,100, or let's say £1,200, so a £200 difference.
Yeah.
But your rent's not guaranteed. You have to take up rent insurance. You then have to pay for your agent to manage it if you're going to be using an agent. So it comes down to about £1,000 anyway. So if we're mitigating all those costs, you're getting £1,000. You don't have to worry about your tenant leaving after a year and paying a new tenant fine.
So it's secure for a period of time.
It's secure. So, and then we'll, let's say, go and get maybe 12 or 1250 or 1300 for the property from them. So we're taking on the risk of maintaining that property. You don't have that risk. That risk is with us. If we've got, let's say we're making, for example, just to make maths easy, we're making, I don't know, £300 per unit. We've got 100 units. That's 30 grand, right?
Yeah.
Recurring. If we have 5 properties that need a major rehaul that month, for example, working on 1 bed, it might cost you, I don't know, 10 grand to do everything. It probably would. Let's say 5 grand.
Yeah.
And there's 5 of it. That's 25 grand. All right, for that month, you might have broken even after you pay your wages and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're on top of it, if we're on top of it, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
You might need to spend a grand redecorating and painting the place. But if we've got our contractors already and they're on payroll, then they're already with us anyway. So from a business perspective, if we've got the volume, it works well. If there's no volume and you're doing 2 or 3 of them, and to be fair, that you can't really approach the local authority and do this scheme with them anyway.
Of course, not as an individual.
Exactly.
So the question then is, if there's anyone listening to this, and I'm always wary of promoting things, everyone needs to do their own due diligence and stuff like that. But say there is someone listening to this and they have been, let's say they've just got a bit tired of constantly maintaining and managing properties themselves. And now with all the legislation of the Renters Reform Bill, they think, oh, do you know what? I would like to just give this to a company and let and forget for a while.
Absolutely.
Would people be able to get in touch with you?
And 100%. Yeah.
Okay,
we can plug our details on there and they can contact us and that. But yeah, so South London all the way up to Kent. I think the furthest we go is sort of Medway.
Yeah.
Obviously rates vary depending where the property is and the size of it as well. But like I say, we've been doing this for so long. I've been in the industry since 2010. Our company's been running since 2016. So we're not new to the business. We're not going anywhere. We're in this for the long game. And like I said, we like people to rave about us and say good things, not rant and say, don't use them. And a lot of it comes from word of mouth and repeat business.
That's really good.
I mean, one new client that I met, for example, he's flying. He's about our age, but he's got like 180 properties.
Wow.
He is literally flying. Like I aspire to be a bit like him, to be fair. And he's like, you know what? He's given us, I think, seven units so far. And he's basically saying, I'm going to give you all my units. This is fantastic. Like, what have I been doing all this time? Every year changing, and tenants calling me every 5 minutes. Now, he doesn't hear from us.
Yeah.
He gets his rent on time. He doesn't have to call me and say, why is my rent not hit? It's there. It gets paid on the same day, every month, without fail. Regardless of whether we've got someone in there or not, your rent is guaranteed.
Adil, can we touch on a little bit about what you guys are doing in terms of business overseas? Because I understand that you're doing some stuff in Dubai. I know that you've done some stuff in Northern Cyprus as well. Still in the property space, real estate. But could you just talk to me a little bit about that? And I don't know how much of our viewership and listeners are actually doing overseas property. Obviously, if you're interested in that, do your due diligence, be careful, because it's very different to the UK. But I do know that there's been quite a big movement towards people looking to diversify and invest outside of the UK as well, especially with all the taxation and things that have been happening over here. So just talk to me a little bit about that side of things, if you can.
Yeah, so that's what it boiled down to, the diversification. So before COVID, we had a few clients that were like wanting to invest overseas and have, hands in several different pies. Being that I'm Turkish Cypriot, North Cyprus was the first place that I had the reach to, if you like.
Yeah. And the wild west. We can talk about Northern Cyprus a little bit if you like to, because that is a whole nother world, isn't it? Of property investment. Literally. So for anyone who doesn't know, you've got potentially issues with title deeds because you've got there was a war in 1974. We could do a whole podcast on that. I'm sure me and you could talk about it for a long time. But you've got title deeds. So you've got potentially Greek land that Turkish Cypriots have built on and vice versa. And then people selling it. And there's been lots of issues over there. But obviously there's also issues getting mortgages on these things. So lots of stuff is done off plan. And then there's payment plans where people will pay the developer for over a period of time. So you were selling flats, were you, on villas and stuff like that? Yeah,
so it was flats and villas. To be fair, we didn't sell many. Well, it was mainly apartments that we sold in, like the nice complexes where they've got the pools and all the restaurants and all that kind of stuff. So we sold a couple out there before COVID. And it was going pretty well. It was steady. We wasn't focusing a lot on it. It was like a 5% of the business kind of thing, like of the energy, should I say.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and then everyone was like, shoot, we can't go overseas, we can't travel, we can't do this, we're stopping this.
Yeah.
So we sort of put it on the back burner. And then a couple of years down the line, after COVID and everything, we sort of thought, this intention of us potentially moving overseas and all, where would we like to go and what we'd like to do now. North Cyprus is beautiful, it's great out there, but for me it's quite slow paced and like very laid back, and maybe like a place for retirement possibly, but again, I sort of go there to see family and stuff like that, so I don't think I would potentially settle out there myself. So the next thing, the place that came into mind that we had a bit of a reach to, again, because we've got friends that have moved out there, business associates that have got businesses out there, was Dubai. The weather's great, the safety is fabulous, the taxes almost non-existent, or there is tax, but it's very low. And we sort of started having meetings and having conversations with people out there. So what we've done is we've managed to build these relationships with people that are already established there, so we can send our clients to them and they can be taken around, shown the properties. And the good thing about there is you can buy property and get visas granted to you. If you spend this over a certain amount, you can get 10-year visas, there's 2-year visas if you set up businesses and so on and so forth. But the payment plan structure is fabulous.
No mortgages?
No, you can get a mortgage if you like,
Yeah.
but after you've paid a minimum of 50% of the development off.
I see, yeah.
However, most people don't want the mortgage route. They'd rather have a 1 to 5 year payment plan, end up paying it off, and then have it as a Airbnb rental so they can go out there and live themselves, or have it as rental completely, so then in the future they'll see it as a little nest egg, sell it or go and retire out there.
And so how much are these, in comparison to the UK property market, how much are these properties in Dubai? I know there's a big variance on where you are,
Definitely.
but if you want to just buy a flat, say for example a 2-bedroom flat in Dubai, how much would that cost you?
300 to 400k.
And then you pay that over 5 years.
Yeah,
so it's big outlay going out in the first 5 years.
For sure. So the thing with these properties as well is they'll release them in phases, right?
Yeah.
So you could have bought one in phase 1, for example, and it was valued at £300,000 for argument's sake. Put like 10% down, and then 1%, 1%, 1%, 5%. There's different structures.
Okay.
But let's say it's coming to the near end of the completion phase of the building. By the time they release phase 2 or phase 3, or they've built another block further down, the prices have gone up. So your 300k might be worth 320, 350,000. So one of our clients, he bought one. There was a demand for flats in that building, apartments. There was none available. He ended up flipping it before completion after he paid 70% of it off and basically made like 45 grand.
Yeah.
So it's like he might have almost spent 300. He hadn't finished paying it off, but then he sold it on before it's even completed, and then happy days. He's made a profit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'll caveat this with I don't know a lot about it, and I'm just thinking of anyone listening that's thinking about investing overseas that you've got to do your due diligence, because I also hear the horror stories of people buying stuff off plan that's not been built yet, paying for it, and then things never getting built and developers going bust. And I mean, in Cyprus, that's like regular.
Of course,
it's constant. And in fact, there's also stories of people buying flats and then turning up after paying for them over a long period of time and then not being built, or perhaps they have been finished, and then you find out that same flat has been sold 3, 4, 5 times over to other people, and all these people think they own the same flat. So there is, you really do need to know what you're doing and perhaps speak to people that know what they're doing. I'm not sure if you're hearing that sort of stuff as well, but I suppose it's just caveating this conversation with, you could have a great investment, but you could also get scammed. So just be careful and do your due diligence on anything.
I think the most important thing with that, bro, is basically using a developer that's well established, that's been around. I can name several. There's Damac, there's Ellington, there's Show, but there's so many developers. Some of these are even backed by the government.
Yeah.
So they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And obviously people do their own due diligence, like you say, but you have to.
So what about comparing that to just buying something that's already built? So say you don't want to do an off plan. There's a 2-bed flat somewhere. Can you get a mortgage on that? Would it be like 50% just initially if it's already built, or how would that work?
Yeah, so we've got actually a broker out there. There's different ways that they structure the deals, and I might get this slightly wrong because it was a little while ago. I spoke to him about this last year actually, and we haven't had to use his services because everyone's been buying off plan.
Okay.
But they can use your UK income. They look at your SA 302s and basically if you're self-employed or your wage slips and stuff like that, and they can give you a mortgage. But majority of the time, you'd need to put a big chunk of it down anyway.
Yeah.
So buying like something that's already been built, all right, it's not going to be new. You might have to do some works in there. It depends what your appetite is, but I think from memory it was like you have to put 50% down and only get a mortgage of the other 50%.
I see. Yeah.
But again, I might be mistaken on that. I need to double check. So there's not like financial advice or anything like that.
Okay, cool.
But if somebody is interested, they can always pick up the phone. I can arrange a Zoom call and we can go through it properly and have our our broker who is on the ground that lives out there as well. That's actually from the UK.
So what you're saying, Adil, right, is that you like the fast pace of Dubai, and the safety and the low taxes, and you don't like the flip-flop, relaxed lifestyle of Northern Cyprus because you have to visit family every time you go there. That's what you're really telling me.
You can have the relaxing side in Dubai as well, but I think it's very different. Have you been to Dubai?
I've not been to Dubai yet. No,
you need to come out there, man. No. I'm going there actually in a couple of weeks' time. If you're free, come out as well.
I hear the weather's at some point can be unbearable, but I guess that's the same in lots of Mediterranean countries. It can get to a point where you just want to sit under an aircon.
But that's when you just leave the country, go on a holiday from holiday kind of thing, you know. But I mean, look, the weather's phenomenal. All right, it does get too hot and unbearable. You can always come back and see your family here, or go to Cyprus, or go anywhere else. Go to America, you know, just travel a little bit. Yeah. So for me, the main thing that's drawn me to there is the security and the safe. I've got children, right? So every time I think about something I think about what's the best case for my children. All right, so they're already going to private education here. So there's not really much difference for me if I was to move there because, again, it's private education. It's a little bit cheaper, if I'm not mistaken, out there as well. And the education is just as good.
I feel you're on the verge of wanting to move. He's bigging up Dubai too much, guys. He's on the verge, isn't he? Yeah. Let's see. No, but your businesses are here.
Yes,
you'd have to systemize these things to be able to fully move.
That's why I need to read that book.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think that's the core thing. Having the idea, having the vision, and having the get up and go. If you don't have any of that, then you're going to be.
It's a common theme,
really.
you know. I'm seeing so many of my clients thinking about moving abroad, and sometimes, like yourself, they've got young children, and even that is not enough of not a deterrent because that's the wrong word. But you've got family here. You grew up here in this country.
Yeah.
Have things got that bad in the UK that people feel that they need to just literally exit and up and go to another country? It is quite a big thing for someone to do. Yeah. But sometimes the motivation does get to that point. You know, you feel like the majority of the income that you make, you have to pay such a large amount in taxation, safety, you know, South London over the years, you know, certainly the areas we're talking about, they're not the safest places to live.
They've deteriorated, mate.
So you sort of think, well, what do? Go further out into Kent or move to another location in the UK? But all areas have crime and have issues, don't they? So I don't know because I haven't looked at Dubai in detail, but it's a real interesting conversation. I just do find some people, they just say, no, that's it, I'm off, and they go.
Yeah.
And there's lots of stats now about, you know, the UK's millionaires and billionaires, how many of them are actually exiting.
I think I heard something about 1,000 leaving a month or something like that.
Crazy amounts, isn't it? And there was a big rush but I don't think that's just a UK problem. I think that's actually a problem all across Europe. I think people are leaving Italy, Spain, Greece, they're exiting into other more tax efficient places to live. It's just so interesting that people would do that. You think you sort of be born in a country and you'd live there for the rest of your life, but for some people that
I think that's what was instilled into it. Like, to be fair, if I look back to my grandparents, so my both of my grandparents were born in Cyprus, but they emigrated to Australia.
Really? Wow.
So my dad was actually born in Australia.
Yeah.
And then they emigrated here.
Yeah.
So they've lived in 3 countries. So I think back, it's like, okay, so most people, they're born somewhere, they live there their whole life, they die there. Some people don't even travel. But when you get to travel and you experience all these different things, the world is your oyster. There's so many different things you can see and learn from different cultures, different experiences. And I feel like, why are we always like this thing about, you know, getting a 9-to-5, getting a job, getting a mortgage, all right, you pay it off and then you die. You know, we're in like this cycle of like working forever until we retire for like 10 years and then you might get sick or you got one bad leg and you can't travel, you can't enjoy yourself.
Yeah. So I must admit, the hot weather for me, whenever I travel or go abroad, one, I do think the sun just makes people happier anyway, 100%. And you're getting vitamin D. But I also just think that sort of all your, I sound like an old man now, but all your sort of ailments and if you've got any sore knee or this or that, I just feel like when you're in the sun, you just feel healthier. My grandparents live in Northern Cyprus now. They've spent quite a lot of time living in the UK, but they moved back there. Well, they've been back and forward for years, but they permanently live there. And, you know, I feel like they're just happier and healthier in the sun. The diet, you know, the Mediterranean diet suits them really well. They can go to the sea within 30 minutes. And, you know, you just sort of, but then I just love London. I don't know if it's just me. There's something about central London, And I know some parts of it are not particularly safe, but the architecture, the culture, you compare that to Dubai.
Yeah.
I haven't been to Dubai, as I said, but a lot of people say it lacks culture. It's, it's very rigid in the way things are created. But anyway, maybe you'll convince me to go over there and see what it's like.
Come for a little trip, even with the kids and the family. You'll go for a holiday with no vision of going to live there or anything. But so I didn't have this. My brother-in-law's actually moved out there with his family. They've been there for two years now, I think, or maybe even 3 years. And they're loving it. Their kids love it. Their kids are safe. So his son is autistic. And when he was here, it was a real struggle for him. And he couldn't go out and really do stuff and socialise because it's not safe for him to do so. Out there, he has so much freedom. Like, he'll go to the cinema by himself. Like, there's no bullying out there and stuff like this. So for me, it's opened a whole new dynamic. And look, my kids are in a bubble. I'm the first to admit that. We live in Sevenoaks. Like, I grew up in South London. We live in Sevenoaks. Sevenoaks is beautiful area. Lots of greenery. They're privately educated, so they are in a bubble. But for me, it's like, okay, my son plays football all over the place, South London, Croydon. So he gets to still meet loads of different people from different backgrounds and stuff. But
you're keeping them protected.
Yeah, but is that the right thing to do though? So, when they get to a certain age and they want to go out and they start going to South London and Central London and stuff.
Don't let them go, mate.
So, but like in these other countries, I've heard that Singapore's super safe. China is super safe, and all these other countries as well. But for me, I feel like Dubai is not that far. You can travel to loads of different countries from there. Look, I'm not trying to sell it to you or to the audience or anything, but I've gone there, I think 4 times or 5 times now, and I'm sort of going every 6 months now. And I haven't seen a bad side to it yet. And if you want the quiet bit, you can have your quiet enjoyment. If you want to have, like you said, you like going up to London, the environment and the ambience. Right? The architecture might not be as good, but they have, you don't have all these crazy waterfall shows every half an hour, 45 minutes. All these other things that go on there. Nice buildings. They've got fantastic stuff to do out there as well. So for me, it's like maybe don't want to go and live there, but have the option to.
Yeah.
And then
I think we should let the audience decide.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
So if you're listening or you're watching this, let us know. Put a comment down and let us know. Do you prefer Dubai or London? What are your reasons? It's definitely a really interesting conversation at the moment.
But look, I love the UK as well. Just a caveat: the UK's been great. I was born and bred here, born in South London, born in Lewisham. Grew up in Catford. Like, it's been great. I've had the opportunity to open my business, met loads and loads of great people over the time. And I'm not saying that it's not the place to be, but compared to 20, 30,
There's
40,
options.
50 years ago, it has changed a lot, and not for the better. Like, there's a lot of people that are struggling to heat their homes. There's a lot of people that are struggling to buy property. They might not have the right guidance, or they might.
You're going to make me go into a rant now, because I could go and talk about the police, the NHS, the taxation. They call it broken Britain, don't they? There's so many things where you feel like they need to solve and sort out problems. But look, let's save that again for another podcast.
Literally. But Trump says, "Make America great again." I think that's his slogan anyway. But somebody was saying the other day, we used to be Great Britain. Now we're just Britain. We need to make Britain great again. But look, there are still great things about Britain. But there are unfortunately things that need to be improved and worked on, like you say. But let's maybe cut that there before we get too political. But no, I think having your options open is the best thing. Maybe not be planted somewhere and not have the options to do as you please. It might just be that we still live here forever and just do 4 or 5 holidays a year, when there's half terms and that kind of stuff, and let the kids figure it out for themselves.
Adil, it's been brilliant. I
Thank
like to try and round up the episodes with a recommendation from the guest, if possible.
Yep.
So I've given you a recommendation from the book, which I'll plug. But is there something which you would like to recommend to the listeners? So, for example, a website, or perhaps a book that they could listen to, or perhaps a podcast or something that people might be interested in if they're into property.
So, to be fair, what helped me at the very beginning of my journey was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, right? There's another
classic, that one.
Classic. And there's also a second one is Who Moved My Cheese. I can't remember the author of it, but
I've not seen that one.
It's quite a short book as well. I'll have to find it and let you know. But it's a very good book about sort of I won't tell you what it's about, but it's
Yeah.
very good. It basically teaches you how to sort of come out of your shell and make change.
Yeah.
Because if you're staying in the same position and you don't take that leap of faith, you're never going to progress. So you have to come out of your comfort zone to then progress and elevate and see what the world has to offer.
Amazing. Guys, it's been Adil here from Key Property. Hope you really enjoyed the episode. Go follow him on Instagram, Facebook. Check him out. We'll put all these details in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing, and love to get you back in a year or so and catch up with you. Because I'm in Welling already, I'm gonna pop in and see you guys in the office. I'm sure we can have a catch up as well.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.